How do I even start this video without making everyone angry? I I know how. I'll summarize it using cats. That's it. That's the whole video. Now, in all seriousness, the last better half of this decade has been somewhat volatile and divisive. We're in a constant fight trying to understand each other's point of views and ideas. And we're also just trying to understand why we're all just so angry. So angry at each other, more than anything. A lot of this anger has stemmed from racial issues. Yes, kids. We're gonna talk about representation in video games. And this is racial to its very core. I'm sorry, but I know that a lot of you do not agree that pink blobs deserve to be heard and seen in mainstream media as much as the green dino fandom doesn't want to. Anyway, first, in order to understand why it's important to talk about representation in video games in the first place, we have to understand the history of representation in media. It all goes back to the times of the first movies of the early 20th century, with films such as Nosferatu and City Lights becoming classics, and the new medium gaining momentum. Many began anticipating the release of films because they were seen as a marvelous and outstanding way to spark imagination, a way to hear each other's stories and sometimes recount greater and fantastical and sometimes unrealistic stories. Storytelling is a great way for human beings to empathize with the characters that were complete stranger to us. However, with segregation and discrimination being so commonplace in the United States at the time, many of these silent films never really had black actors and actresses to portray black characters. And if they were usually playing very negative stereotypes and sometimes very offensive roles. This is where the
oh so very hard thing for white people to not do, including saying the N-word,
of blackface came to be so widely utilized. I'm sorry, y'all gotta stop. It was common for white actors and white actresses to paint their faces black and sometimes their whole body and interpret black characters with very harmful stereotypes and in very offensive ways. Nowadays, of course, we understand why this type of representation was and is very offensive. At least most of us do. Come on. It reinforced negative biases towards black people from white audiences and created mistrust towards people of color out in the real world. Whether we notice it or not, media plays a huge role in how we perceive each other. For example, not to be biased or anything, but the way the media portrays us Latinos per se misassociates immigration with criminality. This misinterpretation can lead for a young impressionable mind to start generalizing towards the Latino population, and in the end, we end up more divided than we started.
representation.
It helps different groups of people understand each other's stories and struggles and sometimes even backgrounds. It aids us with empathizing with one another, and hopefully, if done correctly, it can make our communities push forward in very positive ways. So first, why is it important? Why should we even care about this? Ask any kid, who do they look up to or who do they want to dress up in Halloween? A majority of kids will say Iron Man, Superman, Batman, man. We're all the women superheroes. We're all the black women superheroes. Who will kids from a minority background look up to if they're not represented positively in the media? So why is it important that these kids have someone to look up to? Because positive representation of us of people with our similar backgrounds leads to higher levels of self-esteem, self-confidence, and an overall positive outlook on ourselves. Now, growing up as a light-skinned Mexican kid from the border, I never really noticed why representation was important. I didn't give it much thought to it. It never really crossed my mind. It never really crossed my mind when I was playing as a 12-year-old blonde kid from the forest. Now, fast forward to last year. There I was, sitting on a plane as a 27-year-old hairy-ass Mexican dude. And this is when I started watching Coco for the first time. During and after the film was done, I caught myself laughing and crying and just feeling this sense of joy, this sense of pride of who I was and where my family comes from. It was only then that I've ever really experienced this overwhelming sense of happiness. It made me so happy that I wanted to share all the feelings that I was feeling at that time with my next seat neighbor, a complete stranger, mind you. I wanted to teach him about my culture. I wanted to teach him about the food I ate as a kid. I wanted to teach them about my roots. I just wanted to share this. I had never seen my heritage portrayed in such a positive light. I forgot how to fucking act in public. Jesus Christ, man. This poor man, I'm sure he was freaked out of his mind. Because I was giggling and I was laughing, man. I lost sense of where I was at the time. Now, in video games, it almost works the exact same way. Kids and people of all ages want to feel attached to their games. They want to see themselves in the game. This also creates a huge opportunity for game companies to cater to wider and bigger audiences. And you know what this means, right? Bigger money. It means more money, Nintendo. Yes. Shantae for Smash. What are you waiting for? However, with all of this being said and done, there's obviously right ways and wrong ways of doing representation in media, especially in video games. So, here's some examples of right ways of doing representation. Samus. It was never explicitly stated that Samus was a woman. There was never actually a forced emphasis on her being a woman in the game. She was basically just a space pirate, a woman badass, that wanted to kick some pterodactyl ass. Badass, pterodactyl ass. I gotta find better words than ass. Is there a better word than ass? Nah, I'm sure there isn't. And there are, of course, many bad ways of doing representation. So many bad ways. I mean, to be honest, we only ever hear about the bad ways. Battlefield shoehorning a woman character. Overwatch adding a hamster before they even add a black woman. And then excusing it by saying that they didn't have the resources to add a black woman character. Blizzard! With no resources. Who the fuck is believing that? Jesus Christ, man. Can you imagine? Lack of resources. I'm sure what Blizzard meant is that the only black woman they knew was probably out on vacation or something. So, hopefully this gives a better introspection as to why representation matters at all, or why is it important in video games. And I mean, media in general. Maybe you're someone who hasn't really thought about representation because it really hasn't affected you. But that's something that you probably have the privilege of not thinking about. Maybe then now we'll understand why a lot of people push for representation in video games. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go write a very lengthy letter to Sakurai explaining why we need a Viva Pinata character added to Smash. Am I being stereotypical? To my own people? I don't know. Fuck it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like this video, please make sure to subscribe. Please make sure to leave it a like. But also, if you didn't like it, make sure to dislike it. Every little bit helps. My name's True Fernie. All links to my socials are down below. And I guess all I can say is Overwatch 2 is gonna be so bad. It's gonna be so much ass. Alright, peace out.